and I will let her take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Hi, Jillian. My name is Nicole Kaur. I am a 32-year-old cystic fibrosis patient. I'm also a bilateral lung transplant recipient. I have a bunch of bonus diseases as well. I've got diabetes, I've got gastroparesis, I've got POTS, you name it, it's in there too. My story is very different from Madison's, but equal in the way that we both benefit from the NIH and the FDA and Medicare, Medicaid, right? Our stories are similar in that way. So just to take you back to the beginning of my story, 1997. So to just set the mood a little, think Titanic, right? Titanic came out, so you're hearing Celine Dion everywhere. The first Harry Potter book, right? All right, 1997. I was 5 years old in 1997. And that was when I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. Not because I was well from ages 1 to 4, but because I was frequently misdiagnosed, either due to my race, because they said a beige or brown person cannot have CF, which is very not true, especially because my mother is white. So, I mean, that's a null point. And secondly, because my symptoms are results of a rare mutation, 2 rare mutations for cystic fibrosis. So my symptoms don't always fit in that perfect CF box, right? And my rare mutations also mean that I don't qualify for all of the medications in our robust pipeline. So say the CF Foundation has this epic feat of creating 10 antibiotics or anti-inflammatories, virals in our pipeline. I might qualify for 1 or 2. Right. And the reason that I benefit in any way is usually because of clinical trials or clinical studies or compassionate care or some loophole that my doctor or the CF Foundation helps me fit in. So luckily in 1997, my mom and I were poor. So we had Medicaid, and I was able to qualify for the 2 medications that were available in our pipeline. That first one was Pulmozyme. Are you familiar with Pulmozyme? So Pulmozyme is a medicine that helps loosen the mucus in your chest. It makes it less thick, less sticky. That way it's easier to expel. And the second is Toby. Are you familiar with Toby? So Toby is an antibiotic that specifically targets like a bronchiectasis or a cystic fibrosis infection. So between the 2, I was doing really well for a little bit. I gained weight. But the next few years, about 5 medications came out, 4 of which targeted the creation of CF, right? So it was more of a genetic and cellular level. I qualified for the 1 antibiotic that came out called Caistin. So you figure now it's like middle school era, I have 3 meds. My lung function was about 80%, not bad for middle school, right? And I otherwise lived an ordinary life. I mean, yes, I had a busy day of medications and nebulizers and doing what I could with those medications. I had tune-ups every 2 seconds. Like Madison said, you have that at least once or twice a year of 2-week antibiotics. So now let's move forward a little bit. Now something new is on the market called the vest. Are you familiar with something like this, the vest? Yeah. So this vest, just to give a little background, just to fill in any gaps there might be, this vest goes on like any normal vest, clips in the front, inflates and shakes, and the purpose is to help expel the mucus even easier. It just makes that goal more accessible. So if you take that with something like a Pulmozyme, which I mentioned before, in theory, you wouldn't have as much mucus in your chest. You wouldn't have as much infection. Those 3 things that I've mentioned so far, well, 4 now, those were all due to the FDA approving and expediting those medications. And again, other medications came out, but I still didn't qualify. So between that and NIH, it really takes both of them to work together and for a Medicare or a Medicaid for me to be able to afford it. Unfortunately, when my vest came out, I did not have Medicaid anymore because we weren't poor anymore, right, by the government standards. So I was lucky enough to be in a clinical trial that allowed me to get that vest for $26,000 out of pocket. We were in debt until my college years. because of that. Moving forward a little bit more, I'm going to take you back to 2011, right? In 2011, I was 18 years old and I was deciding on my future career, right? So I'd been a Broadway baby for years. I'm very much into musicals and community theater and all that. So I wanted to follow all of my friends into a BFA for musical theater. But my mom and I had to have a very realistic discussion about insurance and money and my future decline. And, would Broadway really tolerate a tune-up every 3 months? Would they really tolerate me having a cough attack in the middle of a solo? What insurance would I have? Because past 26, I'm off my mom's insurance. And it's not like Broadway provides excellent insurance. They barely provide a paycheck. So I decided to pursue communication public relations in college because although it's not the career of my dreams by any means, it would give me insurance and a paycheck where I can sit at a desk until I die. So my first dream was lost. Let's put it that way. But I complied and I went through my college career. I met my boyfriend, now husband. And in 2014, I was diagnosed with Mycobacterium abscessus. So this is the secondary infection to what Madison had mentioned earlier. B. cepacia is number one, right, of like dangerous infections, and Mycobacterium is second. So I was advised to drop out of college, but I'm a Capricorn and I'm really stubborn, so I refused to do so, especially because my cute boyfriend was, in the same dorm with me, and I had many motivators to continue this journey, especially because my first dream was lost already, right? I refuse to lose a second dream because my CF wants to keep me down. It's not happening. So I stubbornly pursued round-the-clock IV antibiotics while pursuing a full college course load. I graduated on time at the top of my class, summa cum laude, in 2015. However, this came at a cost, literally, in that we were still in financial debt, and physically, because now my lung function is somewhere between 30 and 50%, which is, as Madison pointed out before, very close to transplant. But again, I'm stubborn, so I went right to work. I worked at Princeton Theological Seminary for 3 years. The insurance was fantastic because it was a religious organization. So it was the hill I would die on, that I would stay at that institution for that insurance, right? However, I remember my last day of work in 2018 very well. I had a beaker that I kept on my desk or in my desk drawer, and I would use that to measure the amount of coughed blood I would do on the hour. If it made it to like half a mason jar full, then I'd say maybe I should contact my doctor. Not because that's an emergency, but because that was just a Tuesday, and I was like, maybe I should, just keep them updated. And I would just stare at that beaker of blood, and I would think, have I crossed a line between I don't want my CF to stop me from having a life versus this isn't living? And that pause allowed me to allow myself to go on short-term disability, then long-term disability, and Social Security disability. And I've been on ever since. In between that day and today, I also had a huge depressive episode. And like Madison said, mental health is an enormous aspect of chronic illness and cystic fibrosis, especially when you're given an expiration date, right? There's a part of you that believes it and wants to live into the reality of that. But then there's part of you that wants to say, you don't know me, CF. You don't know, I'm not a statistic, right? Like maybe I'm the 1%. The unfortunate part for me is because I have rare nonsense mutations, I am in that critical generation who's going to expire quickly than most, especially because I had 5 years worth of undiagnosed, untreated infections, right? And because I have, say, 4 or 5 meds to the robust pipeline that's available thanks to CFF and NIH and FDA. So In 2018, I had a very busy year in that my husband took me and our families went to Disney to cheer me up, and he ended up proposing to me. So I remember standing up from my wheelchair, and the two of us took a picture, got engaged. So over the next year, between 2018 and 2019, I was planning my wedding. So you figure DJs and flowers and venue, and I was also being evaluated for a bilateral lung transplant. So one call would be like, "Hey, what color do you want your napkins?" And the next color would be like, "Do you have a living will?" And it was just a very weird time to live in mentally, right? So I just kind of compartmentalized everything like I always do. But I kept pushing that line to make sure I made it to transplant and didn't expire before that and expire before my wedding. So I was married on June 1st, 2019. I was 79 pounds. I had a lung function of 11%, and that was on 6 liters of oxygen. I was so near death that they had to pump me full of steroids and a bunch of antibiotics that I was allergic to in order to get through my wedding. And then 13 days after my wedding, I was transplanted. And I am one of the lucky few who was transplanted very quickly. Many of my friends, my age and younger, have died waiting for transplant or just after getting a transplant. I did not. I recovered within 3 weeks. I was transplanted at UPenn. And after that, I decided it was my goal to advocate for CF. Because before that, my CF was kind of on the back burner, not in the way that I wasn't compliant, but in the way that, again, I didn't want CF to be the reason I couldn't or didn't do something, right? But there's also this balance of, okay, there needs to be some level of self-care. There needs to be some level of balance and tolerance in order to share my story with others, right? So that something like a 1997 doesn't happen again. I don't want patients to go through what I went through. But quite frankly, with this administration, there have been a lot of executive orders so far. And it's my understanding that, one of the goals is to cater to chronically ill patients. And so far this year, the CF has sent us emails saying this clinical trial has been canceled. This clinical trial has been put off. This clinical trial does not have the funding. That is my pipeline. I don't have a pipeline outside of that. And that leads to a delay or a regression in the pipeline itself. Meaning not only are we not moving toward a cure, we're moving backward. And someone like Madison, who has one of the most common genes, is affected then. So this is our pitch. This is our ask, and it's a 3-part ask. So the first one is related to NIH. We are asking for you to please provide $48.9 billion to the NIH funding. That goes toward research, like clinical trials and clinical studies. Our second ask is $3.9 billion toward the FDA funding. And that goes toward our robust pipeline of treatments, including antibiotics, antivirals, anti-inflammatories, genetic mutation drugs. And then our last one is to protect Medicaid as it stands. Because anything that we don't oppose is going to end up being, it makes things inaccessible to us patients, either financially or, there are many reasons we can't attain medication, including the financial aspect. So that's a little bit about my story. Present day, I'm a foster mother. I enjoy giving back and advocating. My kids are on Medicaid. Everyone's on Medicaid. I don't want anyone to be in medical debt, and I don't want anyone to die. That's what this comes down to. And these 3 points are a fork in the road as to whether or not those 2 points happen. So that's my story. That's our pitch. Did you have any questions for us?
I can't think of any questions right now. I just want to thank you both for sharing your stories. It's really admirable, what you all have been through and the fact that you continue to advocate and try to, provide resources and better lives for those who come after you. So I appreciate that. And then as far as, the funding and the Medicaid aspect, we will get to the budget. We will do fiscal year 25, hopefully finish that up mid-March, and then we'll move on to fiscal year 26. And then we'll be looking at Medicaid really closely. There's some differences between the House and Senate budget reconciliation packages right now, but these things are all at top of mind. So we'll continue to monitor those.
Great, thank you. And please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We're happy to be a resource for you. We have a wealth of patient stories that we are always happy to share. So please let us know if you need anything from us.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to hopefully having your boss's support on these things.
Absolutely. We'll stay in touch.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of y'all's day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.